Hi guys! Today's video is going to be a tier list of all the Neil Gaiman books that I've read, which is like, I think around 8 books, 3 comic books, and 1 short story collection. And I'm very excited for the video. It's been a long time coming, and I hope you're gonna enjoy it as much as I'm enjoying making it. So let's get into it. So the first book that I'm going to be talking about is Coraline. And me and Coraline go way back because I watched the movie as a child, and only recently I've read the book and I really enjoyed it, but I don't think it's one of my favorites, only because I think it's a bit more catered to children. I mean, some of his books are like children themed and whatnot, but they feel more adult, whereas Coraline doesn't really. I mean, it has its moments, but like I think I'm going to put it in A. Yeah, I think A, it's nice for it because I liked it, I enjoyed it. It's a very thrilling, gothic Gaiman story, but it's just that little thing that I think it's a bit too catered to children and it puts me off a bit. But I don't know, it's just my preference. Next up is Good Omens, and I really loved it, but not nearly as much as the rest of the books like Ocean at the End of the Lane. So it's going to be still an A, because even though it's a bit confusing, I'm not gonna lie, there were parts of it that were too abstract for me. It just lost me at points, but it's still a very fun concept, and the idea that both Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett co-wrote it, and they're very funny people. I don't know, it felt like when I was reading it, it felt like I was in a conversation between 2 really good friends, and I really like that intimacy that it brings to the book, and that's why I'm going to be placing it still in the A tier, but it's not one of my favorite Neil Gaiman books still. Next up is Neverwhere, and I'm quite conflicted about it. Like, there are parts of it that I absolutely loved, that the world building is very interesting to me in this book. I really liked the idea of our character like going through the sewer in London and like having rat-filled adventures. I find that super interesting, like I love it. And like the whole aesthetic of the book is very special. I think it's one of the best like atmospheric and world building that he created in any of his books. But still, there are parts that almost lost me. I think it wasn't as fast-paced in a sense as his other books, and I think that's what's going to make me like place it in a B tier. And still, like, even if I place a Neil Gaiman book in a B or C tier, they're still amazing. I highly recommend them to everybody except one of these books that I'm going to be talking about I despise, but that's just like 1 in a million. Like, I don't know how that happened, but all the other books and comic books and whatnot I absolutely love, but they're just higher up on the rank or not. Still recommend them though. So yeah, Neverwhere is definitely a B tier for me because I don't know, I didn't connect to the story as much as I do in his other stories, and I think that's what like put me off of it most. So yeah. Ooh, I'm very excited for this one. Next one is Norse Mythology, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It's one of my all-time favorite books. It's a Neil Gaiman retelling of the Norse myths, and it's incredibly funny. It's incredibly creative, and the way that he tells them, I feel just like with Good Omens, it feels like it's like a conversation with a really good friend, and I like that. You can learn a lot more about myths and whatnot through books that are narrated in that way. They're not like educational, and they're like more funny and conversational type of books, and that's why I'm going to be placing it in the S tier. It's amazing, it's stunning. If you want to learn Norse mythology, or if you want a like gateway book to Neil Gaiman, that's the one I would recommend because it's very dimmed down. Like the way he writes is not very Neil Gaiman, so you can like get used to him, and it's just lovely. It's a lovely book. It's amazing. Everything stunning, like incredible. So it's an S tier, definitely. Next up, we have Ocean at the End of the Lane, and I mean, it's obvious. It's not a cliffhanger, this one. It's obviously an S tier. It's just a perfect book. It was the first book of Neil Gaiman's that I read, and I loved the world building, I loved the story, I loved the whimsicalness to it, and the magical realism. It's perfect. It's a perfect book. It's a little book that holds the entire ocean in it. It's just stunning. I love it. Like, I'm blushing just talking about it. And it's obviously an S tier, and in the S tier, it's the first one. It's my all-time favorite Neil Gaiman book. Next up, we have Graveyard Book. This is such a little bundle of joy. It doesn't start, like when you first start reading it, it's not a bundle of joy, it's traumatizing. Like, I have nightmares of that opening scene, so be aware, be warned. But it's so good. This story, like, it completely shows you how good of a writer Neil Gaiman is in terms of characters and fast-paced stories and plots. It's just amazing. You get to watch this amazing little boy grow up, and it's just stunning. Also, I think it's like an homage to the Jungle Book because it's very episodic, and I find it super intriguing because we only get to see the important parts in the character's development, and it's top tier. So that's why it's going to be in the top tier. It's going to be in the S tier because it's just a stunning little story. Also, I think all of his books are like almost 300 pages, so it's not a lot to get through. So you can read them all. Read them all. You know. So the next one is a bit controversial because I know that a lot of people love the book and also really love the movie, but I didn't like either of them. And this one is Stardust. I didn't enjoy it only solely for the fact that it's like a fairy tale, and I don't like fairy tales. I don't enjoy the way the plot like goes and thickens. It was still a very good book. It was still like very intriguing. I really liked the characters. I really enjoyed some scenes, like they're stuck in my head. But I'm not the type of person that likes fairy tales. If you do, I'm going to tell you straight up that it's a very good fairy tale. Like, it's told in a very fun and whimsical and fairy tale-like way. But since I don't like them, it's going to be C tier. Just because of that. If I did, it will probably be like a B tier or A tier even. But I don't know, it's just, I didn't know that. Like, getting into the book, I didn't know it's going to be like a fairy tale. I thought it was just another like magical realism, whimsical type of story. But it just lost me because of that. So I know it's my fault, but it's my own tier list, so I mean, I gotta do what I gotta do, I guess. And the last novel that I'm going to be ranking, I hate. Like, I really didn't enjoy it, and I feel very bad because there are like a bunch of scenes with one of the characters that were amazing. Like, I was actually scared, like I was actually involved in the story. I loved it, but I don't think that book makes sense. And that book is American Gods. Like, I really don't think that there's a plot to it in a sense. Like, I don't know where the story is going. It feels like a fever dream. I have moments in any like day when I think about some of the scenes that I've read in that book, and I'm like, is this real life or am I imagining it? I don't know, it's just so strange. And I didn't read it all. I DNF'd it. I think I read like 200 pages or something, and I just couldn't. And I love Neil Gaiman, that's the weird thing. Like, I thought I could pull through. My plan is to read the comic book after the novel. Maybe that's the way for me to go because I couldn't watch the TV show either. But I really don't like it. Like I've heard that some people either really love it, it's their favorite book of all time, or hate it. And I'm just one of the people that despises it, I guess. So obviously, for obvious reasons, American Gods is the only book that is going to be in the D tier because it's so confusing. Like terrible. I'm sorry, but I really don't like it. Ugh. Okay. And the last novel that we have here is actually a collection of short stories. And I've read like 70% of it so far, and it's called Smoke and Mirrors. I'm really enjoying it. It's very fun, it's very cute, but I don't like short stories. I'm really not the type of person to enjoy short stories, so I'm having like a bit of a tough time getting through it. I'm reading like at a slower pace. But I really enjoy all the stories, and I think that they're very unique and very creative and very Gaiman-esque, which is fun. But still, because I don't really enjoy short stories, and I think to really understand the way he thinks and creates characters and worlds and plots, you have to read his novels, because that's where he's best at. And Smoke and Mirrors, I think it's going to be a C tier. Only because I don't really enjoy short stories, so my prejudices are getting the best of me, I guess, in this video, but still my tier list, so it's going to be a C. If you like short stories, you can give it a go because they're like really interesting. They're not just the like boring short stories, you know? Okay, so now we're going to be talking about the 3 comic books that I read of his, and Sandman is not one of them. I know I'm a terrible fan. I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to. I'm just terrified of it because American Gods was like praised so much and I hated it that I'm scared that I'm going to hate Sandman, but I'm going to read it this year, so we'll see how it goes. So the first comic book that I'm going to be ranking is A Study in Emerald, and it's amazing. It's a pastiche of Sherlock Holmes and H.P. Lovecraft's stories, and it's so good, especially since it has that Gaiman twist to it. It's lovely. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars, obviously, but I'm going to be ranking it an A tier because I think it's just a bit like, it's a short story, so I didn't like necessarily get attached to it, and it didn't have that spark that gives it an S tier level, but it's still an amazing comic book. The twist at the end is chef's kiss, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed his take on the common like Sherlock Holmes and H.P. Lovecraft. I think it's very fun, especially if you're his fan. You can spot like creative ways he changed stories and his own like self to the story, but still an A because it doesn't have that sparkle to it, I think, that gives it an S tier level. The next one I'm going to be talking about is How to Talk to Girls at Parties. And I know it's a novel, but I was in a reading slump. I didn't want to read the novel, so I read the comic book after the novel, and I really enjoyed it. But I don't know, it was still like very short, and it was so weird by the end of it. I mean, it was weird in a good sense, but I think it needed more like either issues or it needed me to read the actual novel. The comic book itself, I think it's on C tier. Like, it truly doesn't compare to A Study in Emerald. It's fun and like quick, a very quick read, but like I don't think it, I don't know, it's just a snippet of a story, so I cannot like rate it higher than that. But it's still fun if you want like a fun pick-me-up, I guess. And we've come to the last comic book that I'm going to be discussing, and it's Murder Mysteries. This one is absolutely amazing. I really loved it. The themes that he proposes in this comic book are stunning, and the ideas, and I just love the way the story progressed, and to see the plot twist and how the characters think in that situation. It was just stunning. One of my favorite comic books of all time, and I think I'm going to put it in S tier. And it's weird because I didn't think that I'm going to put a comic book of his in the S tier if I'm not going to be talking about Sandman. But Murder Mysteries, I don't know, it was very, very intriguing, and it's very unique. I haven't seen that type of plot. If you don't know what it's about heaven and angels, and everything was perfect. It was the beginning of time when angels were creating worlds and people and whatnot, and everything was perfect. Nothing wrong was happening, and one day one of the angels is murdered, and the angel that is tasked with finding the murderer and what happened, what led to the murder, is very confused that something like that happened, because it's the first time ever that murder took place in the world. And it's so interesting to see them work out this conundrum, and I just loved it. It was very it was page turning. It was a very page turning comic book, and also how it looked, the art to it was top tier. So I cannot put it anywhere but the S tier. So there you go, it's an S tier. I didn't expect that. Okay. So these are all the books, comic books, whatnot that I've read of Neil Gaiman. And even though I have one book of his in the D tier, I still consider him one of the best authors out there. I think he's one of the authors that if you like whimsical, if you like more funny, lighthearted, but still very complex stories, he's the one to go with. And people might not like him because of that, but I think you should really give him a go. He's just stunning, one of my favorite authors of all time. And I'm really happy that I got to make this video so you can see how I think about his books. And it's just stunning. If you guys read any of these, or if you read any other of his books, just let me know in the comments on what you think about them. And I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did, and see you in the next one. Bye.